I came from Hollywood, and that wasn't Henry's upbringing. And even with Happy Days, even with the broad comedy that we were going for, he was looking for those other values.
When Happy Days first hit television, Ron Howard was the golden boy of the show. He was the heart, the charm, and the clean-cut face audiences instantly trusted. But behind the perfect smiles and 1950s nostalgia, something changed. Fame was no longer enough. The set that once felt like home started to feel like a cage, and the role that made him beloved began to box him in. So what exactly happened that pushed Ron Howard, the show's most wholesome star, to walk away from one of the biggest hits on TV? Stick around, because the truth behind his sudden exit is far more complicated than anyone realized. The boy who grew up on screen. Before he became the man calling the shots behind the camera, the director behind Apollo 13, A Beautiful Mind, and The Da Vinci Code, Ron Howard, was simply America's favorite redhead. That familiar grin, that soft-spoken charm. He wasn't just an actor, he was part of America's living room. From the small-town simplicity of The Andy Griffith Show to the jukebox glow of Happy Days, Ron didn't just play in the limelight. He grew up in it. But when fame comes knocking before you even lose your baby teeth, it doesn't just mold your life, it rewires it. Ronald William Howard entered the world on March 1, 1954, in Duncan, Oklahoma. He was the firstborn son of Rance Howard and Jean Spiegel, both dreamers with Hollywood in their blood. Acting wasn't something Ron stumbled into. It was practically inherited. His father, Rance, wasn't just an actor, but a director and writer, the kind of man who understood the grind. His mother, Jean, lit up the screen in her own right, balancing artistry with motherhood. The Howards weren't just raising a child, they were building a legacy. And interestingly, even their last name had its own story. Rance was born with the surname Beckenholt, but like so many hopeful performers in the golden age of television, he reinvented himself. Howard became his stage name in 1948. Simple, memorable, and destined to appear in lights. At the time of Ron's birth, Rance was serving 3 years in the U.S. Air Force. That meant discipline and duty surrounded Ron before he even learned to walk, qualities that would quietly follow him into Hollywood. Now, while other kids were learning to ride bikes or getting dirt under their nails, Ron was learning camera angles and cue marks. He was tutored right there at Desilu Studios, the same place where I Love Lucy made television magic, juggling lines and lessons between takes. But his parents made sure he didn't miss out on normal life entirely. Whenever he wasn't on set, he went to regular schools in Burbank, Robert Louis Stevenson Elementary, David Starr, Jordan Junior High, and later John Burroughs High School, where he graduated like any other teen, except, of course, with half of America already knowing his face. But even then, his ambitions were already shifting. Acting was what the world saw, but directing, that was where his heart started to wander. The spark came early, fueled by the behind-the-scenes life he saw every day. Watching his father and the crew move like invisible architects around a story made something click for young Ron. He once reflected that he knew, almost instinctively, that storytelling from the director's chair might be his real calling. After high school, he enrolled at the University of Southern California's prestigious School of Cinematic Arts. For many, that's the dream destination. For Ron, it was just another chapter. He didn't graduate, but in Hollywood, diplomas don't make directors, vision does. And Ron had plenty of that. Before Happy Days ever came calling, Ron was already racking up credits most actors twice his age would envy. His first official film role came in 1959's The Journey. From there, he started popping up everywhere on TV. He appeared in The DuPont Show with June Allison in an episode titled Child Lost, and even in The Twilight Zone, yes, that Twilight Zone, in an episode called Walking Distance. He showed up on Dennis the Menace as Stuart, one of Dennis's buddies, and had guest spots on The Many Loves of Dobie Gillis and Cheyenne. It was a parade of guest roles and one-liners, but for Ron, each one was another lesson. Every director, every set, and every script added something to his growing understanding of how stories work. Not just how to say the lines, but how to build the world those lines belong to. By the time most kids his age were just figuring out what they wanted to do in life, Ron Howard was already living it. But as much as the camera loved him, he was already starting to see beyond the frame. Because for Ron, the magic wasn't just in being seen, it was in creating what people see. So while the world saw a fresh-faced kid with a wholesome smile, what they didn't see was the filmmaker slowly waking up inside him, the boy who would grow into one of the most respected storytellers in Hollywood history. From sitcom star to Hollywood visionary. Before Ron Howard was shouting action behind the camera, he was that wide-eyed, freckled kid stealing America's heart as Opie Taylor on The Andy Griffith Show. In 1960, at just 5 years old, he joined the cast, credited as Ronnie Howard, playing Andy Griffith's on-screen son. For 8 full seasons, audiences watched him grow up in Mayberry, a town that seemed frozen in time, where life was simple, the lessons were gentle, and family came first. It was television comfort food, and Ron was right in the middle of it. But behind that innocent smile was a little boy learning how storytelling really worked. He once recalled his very first scene, holding a toy turtle that he had to pretend was real and dead. He remembered Andy Griffith calmly talking him through it, showing him how to make the moment feel real. For a 5-year-old, that kind of attention wasn't just direction, it was mentorship. Ron later said that from that day, he didn't just learn to act, he learned what it meant to guide a story. The Andy Griffith Show became an American classic, warm, wholesome, and timeless. Even though it aired during the 1960s, it felt like a love letter to a simpler era. Alongside stars like Don Knotts, Francis Bavier, and Jim Nabors, Ron became the nation's favorite kid. And when the show ended after 8 seasons, he wasn't just another child actor, he was part of television history. But as the 60s faded, Ron was ready for something new. He found it in a small anthology segment called Love in the Television Set, which later got retitled Love in the Happy Days. That one-off role led to the opportunity that would define his young adult years, Happy Days. In 1974, Ron became Richie Cunningham, the all-American boy next door. Clean-cut, polite, endlessly optimistic. Richie was the kind of guy your parents wanted you to marry, and the total opposite of his leather jacket-wearing best friend, Fonzie, played by Henry Winkler. Together, they created one of television's most iconic duos, Richie the Heart and Fonzie the Cool. And that chemistry wasn't just for the cameras. Off-screen, Ron and Henry built a real friendship that would last decades. But as Happy Days grew into a full-blown pop culture phenomenon, Ron started to feel the itch. He still loved acting, the energy, the laughter, and the connection with fans, but something deeper was calling him. That same spark that first lit up on The Andy Griffith Show was now pushing him toward the director's chair. He wanted more than just to perform stories. He wanted to mold them. Yet behind the easy smiles and studio lights, there was something else stirring, something he didn't talk about publicly. It wasn't just creative ambition driving him anymore. There were other undercurrents that made staying harder than walking away. So, after years of being America's favorite face on Thursday nights, Ron Howard did something no one saw coming. He left the show that made him a star. And though everyone thought they knew the reason, the truth ran deeper than anyone realized. So what was the real reason why Ron Howard left Happy Days? Keep watching to find out. In 1977, Ron Howard made his directing debut with Grand Theft Auto, a low-budget action comedy he co-wrote with his father Rance. The film was part of a deal with Roger Corman, a legendary producer known for giving young filmmakers a shot on one condition. Ron had to star in Eat My Dust first. He did, and Corman kept his word. That single opportunity launched one of Hollywood's most impressive directing careers. From there, Ron started climbing fast, directing TV movies, including Skyward with Bette Davis, before landing his first major studio film in 1982, Night Shift. The movie starred Shelley Long, Michael Keaton, and, fittingly, his old Happy Days pal, Henry Winkler. It was clever, funny, and full of heart, everything that would later define a Ron Howard film. The 1990s only solidified his place among Hollywood's best. From the fiery tension of Backdraft to the sweeping romance of Far and Away and the newsroom chaos of The Paper, Ron showed that he could handle any genre and still find the emotion at the center of it all. He had gone from the little boy pretending to cry over a toy turtle to a filmmaker who could make audiences feel something real. The Quiet Storm, controversies you never heard about. Ron Howard has long been known as one of Hollywood's good guys. He was the red-haired kid who grew up to be one of the most respected filmmakers in the world. He's got that calm energy, that gentle way of speaking, and a track record that screams professionalism. No scandals, no ego explosions, no messy headlines. In a town that thrives on chaos, Ron Howard somehow stayed clean. But that doesn't mean his career has been completely free of storms. In fact, beneath that calm exterior, there have been moments, rare but real, that tested his image and his instincts. From creative clashes to moral outrage, Howard's journey hasn't just been about success. It's also been about navigating the kind of controversies that could shake even the most grounded reputations. Let's rewind for a second. Ron Howard has been in this business since before most people learned to read. He made his screen debut at the age of 2 and never really stopped working. From The Andy Griffith Show to Happy Days, he became a familiar, comforting face on television, the kind of actor audiences trusted. When he stepped behind the camera, that same trust followed him. Studios saw him as reliable. Actors loved him. Critics respected him. He was considered one of the safest hands in Hollywood, and for decades that reputation held. He made great movies, a few average ones, and yes, even one or two that didn't quite hit the mark. But one project in particular broke that peaceful streak wide open. That project was the Da Vinci Code. When Dan Brown's novel exploded in 2003, it became a global phenomenon. It was controversial on paper, so when Ron Howard signed on to direct the big-screen adaptation with Tom Hanks as the lead, people were immediately curious, and not all in a good way. The plot revolved around a murder inside the Louvre and a centuries-old conspiracy that hinted at secrets buried deep within the foundations of Christianity. To some, it was a clever piece of fiction. To others, it was straight-up blasphemy. And that's when the protests started. In the United States and Greece, crowds gathered outside theaters holding signs and praying loudly against what they called an attack on faith. In the Philippines, the film was banned. In India, screenings were delayed for 2 months. And then came the Vatican, calling for a full boycott and accusing the movie of being full of calumnies, offenses, and historical and theological errors. Even Opus Dei, the real-life Catholic organization portrayed in the story, reached out to Sony Pictures asking them to edit or remove scenes they found offensive. They even requested a disclaimer, something to make it clear this was fiction. But Ron Howard stood his ground. Speaking to the Los Angeles Times, he explained that the film didn't need a disclaimer because it was, in his words, a work of fiction. He pointed out that spy thrillers don't start with disclaimers either, and that as storytellers, they weren't claiming truth, they were exploring ideas. And while critics were divided on the movie itself, one thing was undeniable. The controversy made it massive. The Da Vinci Code became a global event, earning over $760 million at the box office, making it the biggest hit of Howard's entire career. It's ironic, really. The same film that earned him outrage from the church also gave him his biggest commercial triumph. But the calm didn't last forever. Fast forward to 2010, and Ron Howard found himself in another kind of storm, smaller but surprisingly intense. This time it wasn't about religion. It was about one word. That word was GY. In the trailer for his film The Dilemma, Vince Vaughn's character joked, "Electric cars are GY. I mean, not home GY, but my parents are chaperoning the dance GY." It was supposed to be a throwaway line, a reflection of how real people talk. But audiences didn't see it that way. The line caused immediate backlash. With the world becoming more sensitive to language and representation, many saw the joke as offensive. Anderson Cooper even called it out on his show, connecting it to the broader issue of gay bullying. Advocacy groups like GLAAD demanded Universal remove the line from both the trailer and the film. The studio acted quickly. They cut the line from the promotional materials. But when it came to the movie itself, the final decision rested with Ron Howard. and he made a controversial call. He chose to keep it. Howard explained that while he understood the concerns, he believed that forcing filmmakers to edit dialogue for fear of offense could endanger the creative process. In his words, if storytellers, comedians, actors, and artists are strong-armed into making creative changes, it will endanger comedy as both entertainment and a provoker of thought. It wasn't about defending the word. It was about defending creative freedom. Still, for someone known as Hollywood's nice guy, it was an unexpected stance, one that drew both respect and criticism. And in hindsight, Howard himself later admitted the project didn't quite land. In a 2025 interview, he reflected honestly, saying, "From the test audiences, you could just see it didn't have it. It turned out that infidelity was not funny to people. We were pretty smugly certain that it was." It was one of those rare moments where the usually flawless Howard admitted defeat. But even then, he found the silver lining, crediting the film for showing the world that Channing Tatum could actually be funny. For someone who's been in the public eye since nappies, the fact that these are his controversies says a lot. No scandals, no meltdowns, just the occasional creative storm that comes with a career spent taking chances. Love, loyalty, and the woman who grounded him. For someone who's lived most of his life in front of cameras, Ron Howard has somehow kept one thing beautifully private: his love story. While Hollywood was busy churning out scandals and breakups, Ron was quietly building something rare, a love that outlasted fame, pressure, and time itself. And the secret behind that calm in his storm? Cheryl Howard, his high school sweetheart, his lifelong partner, and, as many close to him say, the real reason he stayed grounded through it all. Before the awards, the box office records, and the red carpets, there was just a teenage Ron, a shy kid from California, and a girl named Cheryl Alley. They met as students, and from the very start, something clicked. Ron would later say that when he met her, there was never anybody else. And he meant it. Their first date was straight out of a 1970s teen movie. A film, a pizza, and a mint green Volkswagen Beetle that Ron proudly drove up in. That car became part of their story, a little symbol of young love that would come full circle decades later. He used to joke about it, posting online, "It runs great, so do we." And honestly, he wasn't wrong. By June 7th, 1975, 5 years after that first date, Ron and Cheryl stood in Burbank, California, surrounded by friends and family, ready to start forever. Among the guests was Tom Bosley, Ron's Happy Days co-star, a sweet reminder that his two worlds, fame and real life, were already starting to blend. That same year, he was at the height of his sitcom success, yet somehow, he made space for what mattered most. Love that wasn't performative, but real. But don't be fooled. Cheryl wasn't just some starstruck girl swept up in Hollywood. She had her own plans, her own independence. According to their daughter, Bryce Dallas Howard, Cheryl made Ron propose 3 times before saying yes, not because she didn't love him, but because she wanted to build her own identity first. She was like, "I want to go to school first. I'm not ready to be on your train yet," Bryce shared in an interview. That level of honesty and self-assurance, that's what kept Ron honest too. Cheryl's passion for storytelling matched Ron's. She went on to become an actress and novelist, and even in her rare interviews, she made it clear what drew them together: his deep love for stories, and hers for the way they shape people. Together, they built a creative partnership that fueled both of their careers. As the years went by, their life expanded, not just in fame, but in family. They welcomed 4 children, including Bryce and Paige, both of whom followed in their parents' artistic footsteps. But behind the success stories, Cheryl was always the anchor. Paige once called her mother the helm of our ship, saying she was the sun, moon, and stars of their family. And it's clear that while Ron directed movies, Cheryl directed the rhythm of their home. Now, 50 years later, they're still paddling together, literally and metaphorically. In 2025, the couple marked their 50th wedding anniversary, a milestone that few in Hollywood ever reach. Ron shared a photo of the two of them at sunset on the beach, captioning it with the kind of sincerity that reminds you he's never lost his grounding. Grateful for 50 amazing years and the family and experiences it has yielded. What an adventure downriver, through calm, soothing waters and some tricky rapids as well. Our key: love and respect each other enough to just keep paddling. Thank God for you, Cheryl. That "just keep paddling" line says everything. Because even the steadiest marriages have their rapids, but Ron and Cheryl faced them the same way they faced everything else, together. In interviews, Ron has been refreshingly real about what keeps them going. He credits communication, luck, and growing together. He says it's not just about being loving and considerate, it's about evolving side by side, even when life changes you both. And maybe that's why, after half a century, their bond still feels brand new. Just last year, Ron took Cheryl for a spin in that same mint green Beetle from their very first date. Not for a movie scene, not for a photo op, just because he wanted to remind her and maybe himself where it all began. But while his home life stayed steady, not everything around him was quite as calm. Because behind the charm and laughter of Happy Days, the show that made him a household name, there was another story playing out. One far more complex than the wholesome image America adored. Inside the Happy Days, fame and friction. On screen, Happy Days was the picture of perfection. Laughter at the dinner table, jukebox tunes humming in the background, and that classic 1950s warmth that made every episode feel like a hug from a simpler time. But behind those studio smiles, life on set wasn't always so sunny. Creative tension, ego clashes, and the growing pains of fame quietly simmered under the show's glossy surface. The Cunninghams, America's favorite TV family, were designed to be the heart of the show. Howard Cunningham, the dependable dad with the hardware store, and Marion, the warm and wise mother who somehow always knew what to say, became household icons. They were a modern spin on the Leave It to Beaver era, a little more playful, a little more human. But off-screen, Tom Bosley and Marion Ross, the actors who brought those roles to life, weren't exactly living in sitcom harmony. Marion Ross revealed years later that her chemistry with Bosley didn't come easy. Appearing on the Today Show in 2018, she admitted they didn't click for a couple of years. He wasn't fond of her at first. He'd done Broadway, she hadn't. And according to Ross, that made him see her as less experienced. In her words, "He wasn't very keen on me. It took me quite a while to win him over." Ross believed Bosley had another actress in mind for the role, and when she got the part, the tension lingered. To make matters worse, early on, Marion's character didn't have much to do. Her lines were simple, often reduced to, "Oh, Howard," or "Oh, children, you're not eating." She once approached Happy Days creator Gary Marshall, asking if she and Tom could have a little more to do. Marshall's reply was blunt, "It's not about you, it's about the boys." Still, Ross wasn't the type to stay quiet or serious for too long. She started playing little pranks to keep the energy light, though one in particular nearly got her in trouble. During a rehearsal scene, where the Fonz helped her put on a coat, she impulsively turned and kissed him, right on the mouth. Then she did it again. The audience went silent. Her heart dropped, and Tom Bosley was furious. She remembered thinking, "Uh-oh, I think we've gone too far." But time has a funny way of softening things. Over the years, the tension melted into genuine affection. "We had to work our way through that," Ross said later, "because I learned to love him, and we became very close friends." It's poetic, really, the TV couple that went from friction to friendship, just like any real marriage. Yet the Happy Days drama didn't stop there. Decades after the show ended, a new kind of fight broke out, this time over money. In 2015, 5 Happy Days cast members, Anson Williams, Don Most, Aaron Moran, Marion Ross, and the estate of Tom Bosley filed a lawsuit against CBS. Their claim was that the network had been using their likenesses on everything from lunchboxes and T-shirts to slot machines and dolls without properly compensating them. They wanted $10 million in unpaid merchandising revenue, money they felt was rightfully theirs. Ron Howard and Henry Winkler weren't part of the suit. Winkler said he had his own deal and supported the others, while Ron stayed out of it entirely. Scott Baio, who played Chachi, was also uninvolved because, as their attorney put it, his likeness wasn't used to the same degree as the others. CBS responded by admitting it owed the actors something, but not what they were asking for. The network claimed it only owed around $9,000 each, mostly from slot machine revenue. The cast wasn't buying it. As Don Most pointed out, this wasn't just about Happy Days. "We think this is pervasive. Many other actors in other shows haven't gotten paid either." And just like that, the family-friendly series that once symbolized unity and laughter was suddenly tainted by lawsuits and tension. It was a reminder that even the happiest of shows had cracks behind the curtain, and for Ron Howard, those cracks had already started to widen long before the courtroom drama began. The day Ron Howard walked away. When the laughter stopped and the cameras turned off, Ron Howard made a decision that stunned everyone. He walked away from Happy Days at the height of its success. To the outside world, it looked unthinkable. He was the show's heart, its moral compass, the golden boy America had grown up with. But beneath that wholesome smile was a man quietly wrestling with frustration, ambition, and the kind of courage it takes to leave comfort behind. When Happy Days premiered in 1974, Gary Marshall had no idea he was about to tap into something bigger than a sitcom. He was bottling nostalgia. America was hungry for the good old days, and after George Lucas's American Graffiti swept audiences off their feet, people wanted to keep living in that 1950s dream. Happy Days became that escape with its jukebox tunes, poodle skirts, leather jackets, and all. And right at the center of it was Ron Howard. He had already been a part of television history once as Opie Taylor on The Andy Griffith Show, so seeing him grow up as Richie Cunningham felt like catching up with an old friend. He wasn't just acting. He was bridging generations from black and white innocence to Technicolor cool. But as Happy Days rose in popularity, the balance on set started to shift. Henry Winkler's Fonzie, the tough guy with a heart of gold, exploded into pop culture superstardom. Kids copied his hair, teens quoted his lines, and ABC wanted more of him. A lot more. So much so that the network actually considered renaming the show Fonzie's Happy Days. Ron wasn't thrilled. After all, the show had started as Richie's story, his coming of age, his family, and his friends. Suddenly, it felt like he was being pushed to the sidelines. He even considered leaving after the second season. The tension got so real that Happy Days nearly lost its lead before it truly hit its stride. But Winkler, showing just how grounded he was, didn't want the spotlight all to himself. He pushed back against the idea of a title change, and for a while things went back to normal. Still, Ron couldn't shake that feeling that his time as Richie was nearing its end. The audience loved him, but ABC didn't seem to see beyond the character. He had already dipped his toes into directing with Grand Theft Auto in 1977, and he knew this was where his real future was. But when he tried to get more involved behind the scenes, ABC kept him at arm's length. He later admitted that the network didn't take me very seriously. They only saw him as Richie Cunningham, not the filmmaker he was becoming. That's when opportunity knocked from somewhere unexpected. NBC. Former ABC executive Fred Silverman made him an offer, and more importantly, NBC President Brandon Tartikoff saw what ABC didn't. "Howard does it all and does it extremely well," Tartikoff said at the time. And just like that, Ron made his move. ABC was blindsided. One executive later compared it to an eagle swooping down and snatching a baby from the cradle. The loss hit hard. The network scrambled to fill the void, bringing in Ted McGinley as a new character to shake things up, but the chemistry was never quite the same. Happy Days stayed on air for 4 more years, but the magic had shifted. Without Richie, it was like the show's heartbeat had quieted. As for Ron, the move paid off, though not instantly. He did a few TV movies for NBC, but the directing opportunities he had hoped for never materialized. So he did what he always did best. He bet on himself. He stepped away from television altogether and made Night Shift in 1982, a gritty and hilarious comedy starring his old Happy Days co-star Henry Winkler and a then unknown Michael Keaton. It was raw, risky, and miles away from the clean-cut image that had defined him. But it worked. The film was a hit, and just like that, Ron Howard wasn't Richie Cunningham anymore. He was a director. Walking away from Happy Days could have ended his career. Instead, it launched the one he was always meant to have. It wasn't rebellion, it was evolution. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is leave the very thing that made you. Who was your favorite character in Happy Days? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, click the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.